Hi, everyone. Welcome to This Week in Space Science. I'm Michael Baltimore, and I'm here with Sean Cruzen, the director of the Coca-Cola Space Science Center, and we're always happy to have Sean. Sean, welcome to the show today.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be here, and it's always good to be here on the Coehptv.
Well, we're glad to have you. You're one of our more popular shows that we have out there because we're always learning about space. We want to know what's going on the planet Earth, but also out in space as well. So I know every week you bring in new stories, and also you tell us a little bit about Coca-Cola Space Science Center here in Columbus, Georgia, and that's a wonderful center. So we really want to hear about that news too. But let's start with some of the stories that you brought in today. There's something about this Hartley comet, maybe two, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. So this is they call it Comet Hartley 2, and that's because the discoverer of it, Comet Hartley, his name was Hartley, this is the second comet that's been accredited to him as discovering it. And so this comet is actually making a swing past the Earth here over the last few weeks, and it made its closest approach this week on Wednesday. And this is a lovely photograph you see right there of it. It's got what they call a huge coma. Now, what is a comet? Let's take this a little bit at a time. A comet's a chunk of ice from a deep part of the solar system. And this particular comet, its chunk of ice is not all that big. It's actually less than a mile across, which is, I guess, it's still a fairly big chunk of ice, but it's not that big for a comet. But when that comet swings by the part of the solar system where it starts to get close to the sun, that ice begins to melt, and you have this material that kind of spreads out from the central chunk of ice, which they call the nucleus,
right.
And it forms this big head around the nucleus, which we call the coma. And the photograph you're seeing right here, this is a comet with a relatively large coma. You're seeing that big circle around it right there.
Right.
And deep within the coma, you can see what the nucleus is. That's the brightest part in the interior. That's where that chunk of ice is. And then streaming out away from the nucleus, you can actually see a bit of a tail. So you can see the comet's tail kind of going almost vertically upward in this photograph right here, kind of as a white beam of light. And you can always tell by when you look at a comet's tail, you can tell where the sun is, because the tail does not stream away from the direction of motion. In other words, it's not like the comet's flying along and leaving its tail behind in the direction that it came from.
Okay.
That tail actually tells you where the sun is. And so the sun's solar wind is what's blowing that tail outwards. It's almost like, a streamer blowing off of the front of a fan or something. And so the tail is jetting out in this direction upwards, away from the direction of the sun, I guess it's that way, away from the direction of the sun. And so you can tell where the sun is in that photograph. But Comet Hartley, again, a lovely object in the sky. The reason I'm telling you about it is because it's actually bright enough to be seen in pairs of binoculars or in backyard telescopes. I've seen it myself with both binoculars and a small telescope. And so it's just it's a accessible object, a lovely object to be up there. If folks want to find out more about Comet Hartley, there's a couple of places they can go for information on that. If you go to a place called astronomy.com, that's the homepage for Astronomy Magazine. So type in astronomy.com. I tell you about that one because it's fairly easy to remember, and they'll be able to tell you all about where to find or where to look for Comet Hartley in the sky.
Okay, astronomy.com.
Astronomy.com.
Right, we got it.
That's right. Another good one that's a little bit more to remember, but it's maybe easier to type in some ways, skyandtelescope.com. So Sky and Telescope, if you go to that website, again, that's a website for a magazine. It's Sky and Telescope magazine. Both great magazines for amateur astronomers. But Sky and Telescope, I happen to know, has a very nice map on their site. So if you go to skyandtelescope.com, go to that website, they'll have a story on Comet Hartley. You can pull up a sky map. They'll show you what part of the sky to look and near what stars to look to see Comet Hartley in the sky.
So it's evidently coming fairly close, or at least into view now.
It is. Now, it's a small comet, so it's not a very big comet, but it's actually making a relatively close swing by the Earth, certainly less than the distance from the Earth to the sun. And so that close proximity makes it reasonably bright and reasonably large in the sky, and at least accessible with, again, I would tell you to go out and look for it with a pair of binoculars. You might not be able to see it with the naked eye visually without a little bit of enhancement from binoculars or a small telescope.
Okay. All right. That's very interesting. Comet Hartley 2.
Comet Hartley 2.
All right. So here's a kind of a disturbing story a little bit as I read the headline, Sean, that we have a fuel leak on Discovery.
Yeah, Space Shuttle Discovery is now sitting on the launch pad. It's getting ready for its November 1st launch, which is just a week from Monday.
November 1st.
November 1st.
Got it. Just wanted to say it again.
Yep. And so as Discovery sits there on the pad, they found out that its a part of its maneuvering system, the fuel tanks for that, was having a leak. And certainly you don't want to be leaking rocket fuel when you launch a rocket. That's always a bad thing. And so they wanted to get that leak fixed.
Evidently, yeah, that is a very bad thing.
It could be a very bad thing.
Right.
So they wanted to get it fixed before that launch on November 1st.
Well,
also, you just don't want to lose your fuel, because the particular area out of which this fuel was leaking is called the orbital maneuvering system.
Right.
And so this is, once the shuttle gets up into orbit, this is the system that allows it to be able to correct its orbit or change its orientation in space. And certainly they don't want any kind of a fuel leak there that would leave them short on fuel once they were up in orbit. And so it's pretty important that they get that fixed prior to the launch on November 1st.
Well, absolutely. You know, I was thinking that we've heard a lot about fuel leaks over the years, and I'm assuming there must be some cause for this, because we have heard about it so much. I mean, is it and then this is just a question out there, but is it perhaps the chemical composition of that, and the rings and the various ways to contain the fuel and pass it through hoses and other kinds of things like that?
And it's more with your second point, which are these rings and the fact that this rocket fuel has to be kept at a very cold temperature. And so a lot of times you've heard about a lot of different leaks because the system is very complicated to keep very, very cold rocket fuel in the system at a very low temperature. And so when they have these gaskets or these rings between certain parts of the fuel system, and they have it at that low a temperature, the properties of those materials at low temperature can allow for leaks to occur. And that's exactly what happened this time. There were some gaskets or some rings that had kind of failed and were leaking fuel, and so they actually are having to drain all of the fuel out of this one particular set of tanks on the shuttle, fix these rings, fix these gaskets in the fuel line, then they can fuel the thing back up again. They are optimistic. They've already got it drained. They've already actually, in fact, fixed the leak, but they want to go ahead and replace these gaskets, and so they're very confident that they'll be able to do that well in advance of the week from Monday launch date of November 1st. And so it looks like at this time that this specific set of repairs will not threaten the launch date of November 1st for Space Shuttle Discovery.
Okay, all right, that sounds good. You know, we've got November 1 as the launch date. Now, do we still have one more after this in terms of what we've talked about with manned space flight?
Yeah, there's at least one more that's going to occur, and that's going to occur in February. So that one's already on the books. The recent NASA budget, which was passed, actually has funding for a third launch.
Okay.
And that launch was a tentative launch date scheduled for sometime in the summer of 2011. Looks like that might actually occur because there is funding in the pipeline to be able to make that one happen. So there could be as many as 2 more launches after the November 1st launch of Discovery. It's that third one's still a little bit up in the air.
Okay, all right, good. Well, there's also some news about NASA and some of the lawmakers and even Lockheed, I believe. You mentioned in the opening here as we went over the show. So tell me a little bit about what's NASA doing this time.
Well, we've talked many times on this show about the fact that NASA is kind of changing its direction in terms of what its plans are for human spaceflight. Obviously, at this time, we're retiring the Space Shuttle program. Again, with these 3 launches that remain, the shuttle program will retire after that. NASA yet does not have a replacement launch system to take human beings into space, and so and because of that, there are questions about which direction they should go. They were building a system that was the Constellation program with the Orion space capsule. But then President Obama and the new administration at NASA came in and said, we really want to change NASA's direction. We want to maybe privatize the whole endeavor of taking human beings into space. And in the meantime, until we can get these private companies on board to build adequate launch systems to take people back and forth to the International Space Station, we're going to rely on our friends the Russians to just kind of hitch a ride back and forth to the space station for the time being. Well, recently, the news story that we're talking about now is recently lawmakers and the company Lockheed, which is largely responsible for building the Orion capsule, have come out and said, hey, we really think that we should go ahead and continue building the capsule. Now, that's not the entire launch system. That's not the rocket and everything, but it's just the capsule that would ride up on top of that proposed launch system in the Constellation program. And one of the reasons they say is there's a very valid use for that capsule still in the whole mission of NASA, even if we're hitching a ride back and forth with Russians. And that's simply this, that up on the International Space Station, the capsule can serve as a kind of an escape pod. And there are Soyuz spacecraft up there right now. Those are the Russian space capsules that are used in case the astronauts on board the space station get into trouble, they can go jump in the Soyuz capsule and return to Earth safely. But the Soyuz system itself is beginning to have some troubles. The Russians are having kind of some technical issues, and so one of the many possible uses for continuing to build the Orion capsule is it could serve as kind of a lifeboat off the International Space Station to be able to ride that capsule back down to Earth safely. And so they're saying, yeah, perhaps we shouldn't pull the funding on the capsule construction just yet, and we should continue to pursue that program.
Okay, that sounds good. I like that idea. Now let's move on to another story. Bigelow Aerospace.
Yeah.
What are we talking about there?
Mr. Bigelow is actually a Las Vegas native,
Okay.
and his name is Robert Bigelow, and he owns many kind of firms and has lots of money behind him. But one of his hobby endeavors is Bigelow Aerospace.
Okay.
And
now wait, I have to ask.
Sure.
Bigelow Tea, is he connected to the Bigelow Tea?
You know, I don't really know
Okay.
The resume or I'm not really
Sorry,
sure what
unfair
it's called.
question, but it sounded. I'm sorry.
The
I just went
dossier of the portfolio of Mr. Bigelow. I'm not really sure what all he has his fingers in, but I do know this because I was actually a graduate student in Las Vegas when I was at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. He's a Las Vegas native himself, and he has quite a lot of money behind him, and he actually donated a very nice physics building to the physics department at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas while I was there. So we have the Bigelow Physics Building out there. And so that is the same Robert Bigelow. Okay. But again, one of his other endeavors is a company called Bigelow Aerospace. And they're very much like Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic. Right. They're looking to move into the space tourism industry. And the photograph you're seeing over my shoulder right now, this is an image of his proposed space station for space tourism. Now, you might see those kind of large modules on this particular spacecraft. The engineering idea is that once you get the Bigelow space station into space, that these space modules in which people would live are actually inflatable. So they're big balloons.
Oh, okay.
And once in orbit, they would actually inflate these things up, and they would make these inflatable hotels. So how do you feel about going, maybe riding with Richard Branson up to space and then docking with this space station and staying in an inflatable hotel?
You know, I've been saving my money for that trip to space. I thought I would have to ride with the Russians, but if I can get Richard Branson to give me a... Wait a minute, I'm going to stay in a balloon?
Well,
is that what we're saying?
I was wondering if you would be nervous about that, and
yes.
That is the concept for Bigelow Aerospace, that you would go up and stay in a balloon. But the interesting part, and the part we're talking about it today, the reason we're talking about it today is because Robert Bigelow has managed to get several investors from many different countries on board with this whole idea. And so he's been able to go out and raise a very substantial amount of private money and get these financial backers that are now backing his concept of the inflatable space station in orbit around the Earth. And so money talks, obviously.
Yes.
So now that he's got these investors involved in the plan, it's looking like that plan may become more viable. And so you may actually hear about an inflatable space station actually going into orbit and people staying in an inflatable hotel in space.
All right. I don't know what else to say about that, but all right, I'm going to let somebody go first before I go. Maybe
I think that's the way I feel both with Virgin Galactic and with this hotel. I'm going to let a lot of other people kind of try that out and make sure that's all working
test
well.
that out, and I'll get back to you on that. Now,
who am I kidding? I can't afford either one of those.
No, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars on these things. Come on. All right, but there's another story too about a galaxy, a distant galaxy.
Yeah, this is really kind of an interesting story. And it starts with this. Imagine taking the Hubble Space Telescope and pointing it at a part of the sky where there's absolutely nothing there.
All right.
And doing that for a very long time.
Okay.
That was actually an experiment that was done. You know, what if we take Hubble and point it at a blank part of the sky and take a really long exposure photograph? What do you think we'll see? Well, that was done a number of years ago, and the result of that was a very famous image called the Hubble Deep Field. And because what they ended up seeing was a whole tapestry of enormously distant galaxies that really kind of changed the way we view the number and distribution of the galaxies that must be in the universe, because in fact wasn't nothing there. It was actually quite a lot of somethings there, and there were these very, very distant galaxies. Well, since that time, they've intentionally done this again and again, and they now have an image that they call the Hubble ultra deep field, UDF.
Okay.
The ultra deep field is an image that you're seeing on the screen right now. All of those little points of light right there are not stars.
Really?
Those are all individual galaxies, and each one of those galaxies are literally island universes, swirls of hundreds of billions of stars.
Oh my goodness!
And so you really get this idea of this very expansive, massive universe that we live in out there. Very, very huge in
so
size.
they opened up the telescope lens and just exposed it, just like a photographer would with a long shot over a period of time.
That's exactly right. And so once that long exposure is made, then you can actually see these far distant galaxies. Well, it turns out that one of those galaxies in that field, there were some astronomers for the European Southern Observatory that did a follow-up set of observations on that particular object, and they found that it was truly distant. In fact, it was the most distant object ever photographed. And so as we look at our close-up of the image right here, you're going to see in the upper left-hand corner of the big image a square. And that square has been magnified on the left-hand side of the screen right there. And so you see in that square a red circle, and in that red circle you're going to see a tiny little speck of light. And that tiny little speck of light, it turns out, is the light coming from a very distant galaxy that's somewhere around 13 billion light years from the Earth. And when I say 13 billion light years, you have to understand that the universe is only thought to be about 13.7 or just short of 14 billion years old. So that means that the light from this galaxy, in order for us to be able to see it, has had to travel almost the entire age of the universe in order to get here. Or another way to think about this is this object formed when the universe was less than 5% of its current age now. And so this is an incredibly distant galaxy, way out there on the edge of what we call the observable universe, and it's the most distant object that we know of that's ever been photographed. So a very interesting observation. Incidentally, the follow-up observations were made from what is called the VLT, the European Southern Observatory's VLT telescope down in Chile. And VLT stands for Very Large Telescope. That's one of those clever astronomy acronyms, the VLT. But the VLT is a set of 4 telescopes that each one of the telescopes is the mirror is about 25 feet across. And there's 4 of them that work together. And so they work in concert, these 4 very large telescopes, all acting as one big telescope. So that's truly a massive telescope on the Paranal Plain in the mountains of Chile down there, owned and operated by the European Southern Observatory.
Right, we've talked about that one before. Amazing, and those are amazing photographs too of the galaxies. That is just tremendous. Well, Sean, let's turn our attention now a little closer to home. We've been out 13 billion light years. Let's come back to today and talk a little bit about the Coca-Cola Space Science Center. And I know you've got some great things going on down there.
We have some interesting stuff taking place, and once you've been 13 billion light years away from the Earth, you're ready to come home. That's just my feeling. So we're going to bring you back home and talk about, right here in Columbus, Georgia, Columbus State University's own Coca-Cola Space Science Center down on Front Avenue. Some great new things that we're doing down there. Actually, we did something kind of cool I want to tell you about. That was a past event. I just kind of let people know that we did this. Wednesday night, when that Comet Hartley 2 that we talked about was making a close pass by the Earth, we were actually webcasting that. And so we had our telescope pointed at Comet Hartley. We had a video camera hooked up to the back of that telescope that was streaming live video to our website, and we were webcasting to the world images of Comet Hartley 2 as it was kind of sailing by in its closest approach. And so we did that on Wednesday night. So that's kind of a fun thing. Some of those images will be posted as in our archives down at the Space Science Center. You can go on the website and find out some of our archives there.
Okay.
Another thing we're doing was some imaging of the sky. We'd like to announce that we're getting ready to bring online our Meade West Vaco all-sky camera.
The all-sky camera.
That's right. I'll say Meade West Vaco because they're generous. Through a generous donation, we were able to purchase this all-sky camera. What an all-sky camera is, it's a video camera that has a fisheye lens. It's pointing up at the sky all the time, and so it's looking. It's watching the skies at all times, getting ready to observe, a passing satellite, or maybe a meteor streaking through the sky, a fireball, a bolide, or what those are called. Okay. Or we can just actually see the rising of the stars and setting of the stars as they rise in the east and set in the west, just like the sun does. The movement of the sun and the moon, all of those kinds of things are phenomena we'll be able to observe with our new Meade West Vaco all-sky camera. We've been testing that out. So far, the testing is going very well. When we get done with our testing phase, which should be just within the next week or so, we're going to bring that online. We're going to link it right to the front of our webpage, and people will be able to go there at any time and see live images of the sky. They'll be able to see what sky we're seeing from the Space Science Center at any given time. They'll also be able to see 24-hour and 48-hour loops to watch and see what we've observed over the last 24 or 48-hour period.
Oh, okay. So you're going to, those are sped up a little bit. You're going to speed those up so that we can see what's happening in that.
That's right. Those are time-lapse animations that are made out of those images that were taken over the last 24 and 48 hours. And so you'll be able to see about a 30-second loop of the sky moving and see what the conditions were like in the sky or what interesting objects might have gone over anytime in the last 24 to 48 hours.
All right. All right. So what else is going on down at the center?
Well, you know, we're doing a little bit of work on our old Omnisphere Theater, and that's our planetarium. And of course, with any kind of technical set of apparatus, you gotta close things down once in a while. You gotta make some changes. You gotta do some upgrades and some updates. That's actually happening as we speak right now. And so the Coca-Cola Space Science Center's Omnisphere Theater is closed today, but those upgrades are being made to the software control system at the theater. We'll be back up and operating for the weekend, and there's a great show lineup. I'd just like to encourage anybody, if you haven't been down to see a show in our Omnisphere Theater, you need to come down and take a look and see one of those shows. A couple of great shows running this month are the 7 Wonders of the Universe, which talks about 7 Wonders of the Universe. It also talks about the 7 Wonders of the Ancient World, so that's kind of a fun show to see. We also have another great show running in the theater called Invaders of Mars, which talks all about our probes that have gone to Mars and investigated the surface of Mars and the atmosphere and the conditions that exist there now. So that's another great show running in the Omnisphere.
That's not Invaders from Mars, though.
Not Invaders from Mars. That would be a little bit different. That would be more like a War of the Worlds kind of show. But we don't have that one going right now. We do have Invaders of Mars, though. We've gone and invaded Mars. Actually,
I think it's us, right?
A lot more junk to Mars than they've sent down our way, right? So we're going to talk all about that in that show right there. Also, this is October. We are approaching the end of the month, and that means Halloween is just right around the corner.
Absolutely.
So another show you might want to be watching for is a show we run called Laser Fright Light. Laser Fright Light. And what that means, it's a bunch of great songs all about some kind of scary Halloween stuff going on there, but also a lot of fun animations up on the dome. Don't want to get you the idea that it's very scary. It's perfectly appropriate for children. So bring them down and see Laser Fright Light running in the Omnisphere Theater for this Halloween time of year. So again, if you haven't seen a show, we have one of the most state-of-the-art planetariums anywhere in the world, and so you really need to come down and check that out at Coca-Cola Space Science Center, the Omnisphere Theater at Columbus State University. You
know, I was just talking to a few people here, and we're in the College of Education Health Professions, if we haven't said that enough already, and I just ran into some students, but also some faculty who have recently made a trip down there, and they were blown away by all of the wonderful things you've got. They've been in the theater. They've also, sometimes you have astronomy night, and you can actually go down and look through one of those big telescopes. That's got to be fun.
We like to think that's a fun thing to do, and we had an astronomy night just last Saturday at the Space Science Center. Had a pretty good crowd come down there and take advantage of our telescopes. The Moon and Jupiter both up in a very nice position to be observed right here at the end of the month of October. But also, we're going to be out tomorrow night at another place that's a great outreach facility for Columbus State University and right here in the College of Education and Health Professions, and that would be Oxbow Meadows.
Oxbow Meadows,
and we're going to be out with our friends from Oxbow Meadows doing a collaborative program out there. It's really their program. It's called Tricks, Treats, and Trails. They're going to have some carnival activities for the kids. They're going to walk people down their walking trails, their nature trails out there at the Nature Center, and they're also going to do a bird release, a raptor release. They're going to release some owls or some other raptors back to the wild, so that'll be kind of a fun thing. But along with that, Space Science Center's team will be out with our telescopes, and right about 7 o'clock, a great big full moon is going to be rising in the east. We're going to have our telescopes trained on the full moon and also the planet Jupiter, and be giving people a great view of those two objects from the Oxbow Meadows Environmental Learning Center out there in the south part of Columbus.
Oh, that sounds great. I hope there's a big crowd out there for that.
I'm sure they will be. They've advertised this pretty well, and I know a lot of people just love to go out to Oxbow Meadows anyway, so we're looking forward to a really big crowd, a really great group out there, and we'll be showing you the night sky out there at Oxbow Meadows.
You know, Sean, I think we've covered a number of things, but I saw on the list something about birthday parties at the Space Science Center.
You know, just a few weeks ago, both here on this show and on my radio show, I kind of just happened to offhandedly mention, hey, you know, we occasionally do some birthday parties for kids if you want to come down and rent them. Well, since I said that,
Yes.
Lots of people have come down and set up birthday parties at the Space Science Center. That's gotten to be a very popular idea. And now we're running 3 or 4 birthdays every weekend. And that, we think that's fantastic, actually. And so let me just reiterate that message by saying it's a great place to have a birthday party. If you have some kids, you want to have a fun place to have, a unique place to have a birthday, call us at the Space Science Center, find out all the information about our birthday party packages. When the kids come down, they get to use our classroom to have the birthday party in. They get to take advantage of all the great interactive lobby displays we have in our lobby. They get to go in and see a show in the Omnisphere Theater. And having a birthday party at the Space Science Center is apparently really fun. So come on down, give us a call today. Sign up for a kid's birthday if you have a kid's birthday coming up in October or November. You need to reserve your time right away, actually, because again, it's become a fairly popular idea.
I can see that being a very popular idea, bringing the kids down and just having a great party. And what a great place to be. And learn some science while you're down there.
That's
having
right.
fun.
You need to
as
sneak
well,
in just a little bit of learning about space in the background of all that fun you're having at the birthday party down there. So.
Well, Sean, I just have to say this has been another great show, and I appreciate so much all the information you bring to us here in the College of Education Health Professions in our studio here in Jordan Hall. 218 in Jordan Hall, as a matter of fact, here on College of Education Health Professions Television. And we just want to say thanks for coming out, and we want to thank our viewers. Also, we want to thank Seiji Wallace, our studio operator today. He's doing a fine job running all of everything that we're doing on the operation that you're seeing right now. We want to thank him, and we want to ask that you come back and see us again next week on this show, and a very important show on our network, This Week in Space Science with Sean Cruzen, the director of the Coca-Cola Space Science Center. Hey, we'll see you next time. Thanks for viewing.
Thank you, Michael.